Okay. What is wisdom? I had originally intended to do wisdom and knowledge in the same sermon, because I thought I could truncate the whole series if I take two of them at a time, and maybe we could do this all in 4 weeks or 5 weeks, but I don't think I'm going to make it. Because the more I studied wisdom, the more I found that wisdom is different than knowledge. That wisdom is something else. And so there is, of course, another word for wisdom than there is for knowledge. The word wisdom occurs 52 times in the ESV New Testament, 52 times also in the King James Version, 50 in the NIV. 51 times it translates from the Greek word Sophia, from which we derive the English word sophomore. The word sophomore is a combination of the Greek words Sophia, meaning wise, and moros, meaning foolish. It is from the Greek word moros that we get the English word moron. So, when someone calls you a sophomore, what they're calling you is a wise fool. You know just enough to be in school and not enough to get out of it. Interestingly, both of these words can be found in Romans chapter 1, verse 22 in the Greek, which reads, "Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools." Okay. So the Greek word Sophia occurs 52 times in the New Testament. It occurs most frequently in 1 Corinthians, with 17 occurrences there. The Hebrew words for wisdom, and there are I think 6 or 7 different words that get translated as wisdom. The Hebrew words for wisdom occur 160 times in the Old Testament. Most frequently the word chokhmah, which is not a pleasant sounding word at all, is it? With 139 uses. The word wisdom is the most common used, the word wisdom is most commonly found in the book of Proverbs, with 46 uses. What does this tell us? That 1 Corinthians, with 17 uses, and Proverbs, with 46 uses, are two books in the Old and New Testament that focus more on wisdom than any other books in each of their testaments. We would do well to study Proverbs and 1 Corinthians if we want to know what wisdom is. But since I want to keep this down to 9 sermons and not 50, we'll move on. From the Baker Encyclopedia of the Bible. Wisdom is a capacity of the mind. In the Old Testament, it involves both knowledge and the ability to direct the human mind toward a full understanding of human life, toward its moral fulfillment. Wisdom is thus a special capacity necessary for full human living, but one which can be acquired through education and the application of the mind. The wisdom literature in the Old Testament is that literature which has this special concept of wisdom as its central theme. It comprises principally the books of Job, Proverbs, and Ecclesiastes, and may also be found in portions of the Psalms and the prophets. The wisdom literature contains both moral substance of true wisdom and also intellectual explorations of wise men to seek understanding of the fundamental problems of human existence. That's a mouthful. What does it mean? Intellectual explorations of wise men seeking to understand the fundamental problems of human existence. The perfect example of that is the book of Job, where we find Job, having suffered a terrible tragedy, sits down in the ashes to wait for the Lord. And Job's 3 friends come and they sit with him in silence for a week, which is the best thing they ever do for him. And then they open their mouths, which is the worst thing they ever do for him. And Job's 3 friends try to convince him that the reason Job is suffering is because of wickedness and sin. Job tries to convince them that he is not wicked or sinful, that he is righteous and obedient. Now, what's the purpose of this exchange? Both parties, both Job and his friends, are trying to explain the fundamental existence of humanity. They're trying to explain why people suffer. And so Job finds itself solidly entrenched in the category of wisdom literature. From the New Bible Dictionary, wisdom is intensely practical, not theoretical. Basically, wisdom is the art of being successful, of forming the correct plan to gain the desired results. Its seat is in the heart, the center of moral and intellectual decision. Now, based on that, who can be wise? According to that definition, wisdom is the ability to plan ahead, to make sure you have proper resources. There are some terrible, terrible people in this world who do that thing very well. There are people who plan ahead to make sure they have the proper resources for any endeavor they want to undertake. Jesus said, if a man sets out to build a tower, does he not first look at his resources to see if he has enough to complete it? And then he compares the man who is unable to complete the tower but has begun it to the foolish man. But the man who has enough, the man who thinks things through and makes sure he has enough, the man who does not begin until he does have enough, as the wise man. Let's look at some examples from the scriptures. Exodus chapter 31, verses 1 through 5. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, See, I have called by the name of Bezaleel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah. And I have filled him with the Spirit of God, in wisdom, and in understanding, and in knowledge, and in all manner of workmanship, to devise cunning works, to work in gold and silver and brass, and in cutting of stones, to set them, and in the carving of timber, to work in all manner of workmanship. The Lord imbued this particular person with the wisdom to know how to build things, how to work gold, how to cut timber. That's a type of wisdom. Now, if that were the only type of wisdom we were going to look at, I'm the biggest fool in the room, because I couldn't possibly do any of that. My dad showed me how to cut lumber, and I was really bad at it, and so before I ruined any more boards, he sent me in to play video games, which I was good at. Isaiah chapter 40, verses 18 through 20. To whom then will you liken God, or what likeness compare with him? An idol? A craftsman casts it, a goldsmith overlays it with gold, and casts it for silver chains. He who is too impoverished for an offering chooses wood that will not rot. He seeks out a skillful craftsman to set up an idol that will not move. Notice here that the Greek word skill, or the Hebrew word skillful, is a derivative of chokhmah. Now, when I was studying Hebrew last semester, I could not remember chokhmah to save my life. Whenever I came to that in my flashcards, I would look at that and draw a blank. And so what I started to do, and you may find this funny, everyone else does, is whenever I got to chokhmah, I would smack myself on the back of the head twice. Chokhmah. Because that's where wisdom is. It's in the back of your head. Chokhmah. And we were in class. We're going through these words, and the professor brings chokhmah up on the board, and I went, and she said, what? Notice here that wisdom, which is here translated as skill, does not have to be used in the service of God. That wisdom is not something exclusive to those in the service of God. Can an atheist be wise? Certainly. What is the wisdom that God gives then? Or more specifically, what is this spiritual gift? Because it's not wisdom exactly. Paul tells us that the spiritual gift is the utterance of wisdom. Isaiah chapter 47, verse 10. You felt secure in your wickedness. You said, no one sees me. Your wisdom and your knowledge led you astray. You said in your heart, I am, and there is no one besides me. Ooh, what a scathing indictment. The word of wisdom, the utterance of wisdom. The fact that this gift is described as the utterance of wisdom indicates that it is one of the speaking gifts. This gift describes someone who can understand and speak forth biblical truth in such a way as to apply it skillfully to life situations with all discernment. So, while we looked at examples from the Old Testament of craftsmen who were gifted with the wisdom to create their things, what Paul is talking about here is the utterance or the speaking, the word of wisdom. What he's talking about is the ability to tell the story, to tell the gospel, to preach, to teach biblical things in such a way as someone understands. I've seen a lot of preachers get up in a lot of pulpits with no notes, with no preparation. I actually saw a guy do this once. He said, well, I ain't got nothing to say tonight unless the Lord gives me something to preach on. And then he started screaming. And that man screamed for an hour and a half. And he hit on everything. I'm telling you, he started talking about Gideon, which I guess he had just been reading. And he's yelling about Gideon and about Gideon listening to the Lord and about Gideon's plans for this battle that was coming up. And right in the middle of his message, he takes a left turn and starts yelling about them evil Catholics. I'm like, okay. And he yells about them evil Catholics for about 10 or 15 minutes. And then he comes back to Gideon, which is all right because I was listening to the Gideon thing anyway. It was more interesting. And he talks about Gideon for another 15 or 20 minutes. And then he takes a right turn. He starts yelling about that new international version of the Bible. This man was constructing a sermon in an unwise fashion. We can discuss other branches of the Christian faith. We can discuss other translations of the Bible. But neither of those things have a place in a discussion of Gideon. None of those things build on, none of those things edify the lessons we learn from Gideon's faith in God. So you'll see when I preach a sermon, when I preach a good one, and I promise you I know the bad ones, I really do. But when I preach a good sermon, you'll see that all the pieces come together at some point. That they're all connected properly, like a craftsman who builds a beautiful thing. Like a farmer who builds a tower. The four legs of the tower in his field all meet at the floor of the observation deck. That all of these things work together to support the structure of the whole. And so what Paul is talking about in the utterance of wisdom, and wisdom, the utterance of wisdom being the spiritual gift, is the ability to tell people about Jesus. Boy, that sounds... Why didn't I say that at the first start? Why didn't I just open with that? Because we needed to build the tower. We needed all the pieces to come together. More from the New Testament, James chapter 3, verses 16 through 18. For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there will be disorder and every vile practice. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable. See, we're building the tower. First pure, then peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. And the harvest of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. So, well, that's great, preacher. That's really great. Now, you just told me that I'm not wise, that I can't tell people about Jesus because I can't build a case like that. James says, if any of you lacks wisdom, this is familiar all of a sudden. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God who gives generously to all, without reproach, and it will be given him. And about the word, let the word, for Colossians 3:16, let the word of Christ dwell in you richly, teaching and admonishing one another in all wisdom, singing songs and hymns and spiritual songs with thankfulness in your hearts to God. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 18 through 20. Let no one deceive himself. If anyone among you thinks he is wise in this age, let him become a fool, that he may become wise. For the wisdom of this world is folly with God. For it is written, he catches the wise in their craftiness. And again, the Lord knows the thoughts of the wise, that they are futile. Excuse me. So what do we do with this? Wisdom is the ability to properly construct things, the know-how and the skill to put it all together. The utterance of wisdom is the ability to properly construct an argument or a testimony or a story to teach people about wisdom, to teach people about Christ, to draw them to the throne of God. If you can't do that, it's okay. Ask. Pray about it. And I don't mean an hour a night at home in your prayer closet crying out, Lord, give me wisdom. Maybe the best way to do this is when you find yourself in that situation. When you find yourself with someone staring back at you who says, tell me why you possibly think that there was this guy who died and rose again. Doesn't even make sense. Tell me. I like to think that that's a great time to pray. And you don't have to bow your heart and lift your voice and cry aloud, Lord God, give me wisdom. But maybe you just whisper in the deepest part of your being, Lord, I want to do your will. Teach me what to say. Give me the utterance of wisdom that I may represent you. And then build the tower. Craft the beautiful thing. Put it together in such a way that someone can say, I understand that you believe this, and I understand you have good reasons for it. This is the utterance of wisdom. And everyone knows the beginning of wisdom. The beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord. Bring them to this respect, to this knowledge, to this understanding, and help them to fear God and to know Him as you do. May it be so. Amen.